August 2nd, 2020. Can you tell me your name and age and where you're recording today?
Thank you, Beth. It's actually August 3rd, I think.
Oh,
I am Cheryle Gail, born in Cupertino, California, and I'm recording from Mountain View, California.
and what's your age?
I am 56 years old. My birth name was Cheryle Gail Barton, but I was called Gail until I started university. So just FYI, in case anybody looks it up under Gail Barton. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Can you tell me how the person who harmed you was related to you?
He was my brother. He still is my brother. He's alive.
How old were you?
Well, I believe I was in sixth grade, and being as dyslexic as I am with numbers, how old are you when you're in sixth grade? I believe I was 12. Um, yeah.
Okay. And do you know how old your brother was at that time?
10 years older than myself, so he would have been 22.
Okay. Where did the abuse happen?
Um, there were two episodes, and they were both in the bed of he and his wife. The first one was a little home on Page Mill Road in El Camino. Um, and the second one was in their home somewhere in San Jose. I don't remember exactly.
Mhm. Can you tell me a little bit about how you felt when you were being harmed?
Yeah. I think before I do that, though, I just want to explain that how I was in their bed. My mother had asked me to help them move into their home. And so that was the only bed in the house. So that's why I was in the bed. Um, and how I felt. Well, the first time it was, I say only, but it's only. I woke up in the middle of the night feeling something on my butt. And I froze. The feeling in my body was um, surprise and confusion and shock, I guess, um, and hard and cold sensations.
Were there feelings that you can remember having at that same time?
Feelings. Feelings is always a hard one for me. Sensations in the body is easier. Feelings. Um,
Or maybe thoughts?
yeah. Um, I confusion. Um, wonder of what is happening. Um, yeah.
What was it at all upsetting? You recall
Um, upsetting. It was mm,
or any negative feelings?
scared. Scared, confused,
Oh,
shocked. Those are all feelings, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's as an adult, but for some reason, I think, is he confused? Does he think I'm his wife? So confusion, lots of confusion.
and the second Do you want to speak to how you?
Yeah, the second was the same, helping them move. Um, and this one was, um, yeah, definitely more, again, asleep in the bed. Um, and this time he shoved his penis down my throat and ejaculated in my mouth. And um, shock and hurt and confusion. Yeah, a lot of confusion. Um, this was, prior to this moment, my brother, who I loved and adored. So it was, yeah.
Do you know whether he was under any mind altering drugs or alcohol at the time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, I believe that it was a night of a party. I have that in my mind of, and so there would be for sure stoned every day of his life. So marijuana and alcohol. Um, if there was other drugs, I'm not sure, but for absolutely marijuana and alcohol.
And you were in sixth grade, and okay. Um, did you tell anyone about the abuse after it happened?
I did. I told my best friend at school the next day. Um, I believe it was the next day. Everything's blurry because I'm 56 and this was a long time ago and there was a lot in between. So, but what I do remember is the next day having dried up hard, um, crunchy hair, from the ejaculate in my hair is, what, I remember. But and I don't remember if I was on the playground or where I was when I told my best friend. Um, but she looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're lying." And to the best of my, adult brain, that is the moment that I repressed it and had no conscious memory going forward until the birth of my daughter. And yeah, and I don't know what happened in my brain other than I know as an adult that our brains go to immeasurable feats to protect us. And I imagine it was trying to protect me.
How old were you when you had your daughter?
17 years old. She
So,
she was 3 months old on my 18th birthday.
you were pregnant about 5 or so years after you were molested.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Um, can you tell me a little bit about how you coped during that time?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I was stoned every day of my life. Um, my oldest sister, who's 12 years older than I am, introduced me to marijuana when we were visiting her in Hawaii. And so I was in fifth grade when she turned us onto pot. And she she did mail joints through the mail. So I think I remember being stoned in sixth grade once. But starting in seventh grade, probably 99.9% of my days of my life, I was stoned. A joint cost $2, and girlfriends and I would go in on use our lunch money and buy a joint and get stoned. At brunch, at lunch, um, and alcohol. I was, yeah, under the influence, mass quantities, often whenever possible. I was a very large, tall person, and the Lori liquor store sold it to me. I could walk right in there, and the people who owned the store, um, I remember, I'm pretty positive, were Asian, and I guess they probably just didn't care who they sold to, or we'd stop somebody prior to walking in and ask them to buy us alcohol. But yep, I was stoned and drunk every day of my life.
And how were you how would you describe yourself before the abuse and
Mm,
after the abuse?
mm. Well, I would consider myself to be extremely innocent prior to the sexual abuse. I had showers with my father. I took naps with my father. I don't ever remember seeing a penis. Um, if my father had one in the showers, I sure wouldn't have been able to tell you. I could tell you exactly how he dried off his whole body after a shower, but yeah, I was raised in a very religious family, and God the Father was the highest, yeah. And then dad was the next powerful person after that, and I was raised to obey and be seen and not heard, um, respect my parents, and um, yeah, just didn't, yeah, I just obedient kid, very active physically. Um, Both my sisters spent their lives lying on a couch reading, and I was kind of a fly they would have want to swat because I would always want them, come play outside, let's play outside. And um, so bike riding and fence walking, um,
Sounds like
and
a happy childhood.
yeah, I mean, other than a father who was verbally and physically abusive, a happy childhood. Um, but Yeah, no, I lived in fear, walked on eggshells around my father.
Mhm.
There was never any security that something pleasant wasn't going to end up being something horrible. So, very, very hard to relax into and trust anything that was enjoyable. It would end in my father yelling, and I mean, I grew up with, you idiot, didn't you see that telephone cord? How could you trip over that telephone cord? And very, very angry. um, and he was the person that I crawled on his lap every night and fell asleep with, to hearing him sing Froggy Went a Courtin'. So um and after the abuse, yeah, drugs and alcohol, all I cared about was, yeah, life revolved around getting stoned and getting drunk, and working. I mean, I was always a hard worker, but my dad definitely taught me how to work hard.
And the drugs and alcohol, did did that make you feel better, do you think?
Um, well, as an adult, I definitely know that it was an escape from reality,
Okay.
for sure. I mean, I do not have to be in reality. I do not have to be in my mind on drugs and alcohol. So, I definitely know that.
Mm. What were some of the other more long-term detrimental effects to your body, mind, and spirit caused by the sexual abuse, in your opinion?
Hmm. Well, number one, I had a child at 17. I would not recommend anyone having a child at 17. Um, I married the father of my daughter, and I believed I loved him. I believed I could communicate. I believed, um, yeah. Um, so bringing another human being into this world, not being a mature adult, functioning, um, yeah, that's perpetuates the cycle of, um, yeah. So that's probably my biggest regret is that I wished that I would have already been recovered and off of drugs and alcohol, and um, had a career and already had my education prior to having bringing another life into this world. That would have been my preference. Perhaps if I hadn't been sexually abused, um, my guess is that I would not have been acting out sexually. I would not have had so many um, sexual partners. Um, um, Perhaps I would have used protection. Um, I don't, I'm not quite sure about that. Um, I did go on to do, probably, well, not every drug, but mushrooms and acid and cocaine and speed and downers. And um, so I did use many different drugs. Um, I would love to know who I would be today if I would not have killed so many brain
Mhm.
cells at such a young age. Fifth grade is a very young age to start getting stoned. Um, so I do wonder. I am dyslexic. I do wonder. I was dyslexic way before I was. I mean, in first grade when we started learning to read, I was dyslexic. So I cannot blame the drugs or the sexual abuse on that. It's the way my brain came into this world. But I would like to know who my brain would be without. And then detrimental effects on my body. Massive TMJ, which is jaw pain, temporomandibular joint dysfunction, that would start in my jaw, and the pain would go around the back of my head and then to my forehead, probably 5 out of 7 nights a week.
And at what age did that begin, or how soon after the abuse did some of these bodily
Yeah,
issues
the
come?
the the TMJ problem was um let's see. Um I'm gonna guess when I was 20 or 21. And it lasted until um, best guess might be like 25.
Okay.
Um, and thank goodness I found a chiropractor who went inside my mouth and worked the muscles inside my mouth. And thank goodness I took Fred Luskin's Forgive for Good class at Stanford University. Um, and because I learned that when we dwell on something negative for up to 15 minutes, it affects our immune system. And that I learned that all of my plotting, because my life for many, 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 many years, daily, what was in my brain was how I was going to kill my brother, how I was going to chop off his penis and make him eat it. Um, all of the things that I wanted to do to him. And I learned in this class that I was only killing myself. I was, my brother didn't know that 6 hours a day I was wanting to have revenge on him. Um, so I learned that to catch my brain, become conscious of what I was thinking about, and Fred's um, cure was to think about anything that made us smile. And so for me, it was often nature or the sun, or um, and I argued with Steve often because I told him, "You are not teaching us how to forgive. You're teaching us how to have brain control." And his premise was that that will inevitably happen. So to this day, I still think it's presence of mind and conscious of what it is that I'm thinking. And when I first started practicing this, I might go half a day before I became aware that I call it spiraling down, that my brain was in this terrible place. And eventually with practice, I could catch it and redirect my thoughts. What makes me happy? What makes me smile? Where do I want my attention to go?
Mm.
So it was, I had to take his class twice because it takes me a while to really get something in me. But yeah, so your question was the physical ramifications, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So yeah, that long term, the biggest challenge, even with I mean, I've done a ropes course, I've done the Samurai Warriors games, I've done uh, holotropic breath work, meditation, group therapy, one-on-one therapy, um, so much. And even with a whole lifetime, my whole lifetime has been dedicated to me healing. I cycled across the United States of America speaking out against childhood sexual abuse. I've spent my life attempting to recover from those two moments in time that that broke my trust, is what happened. That's the greatest long-term detrimental effect, is that I loved my brother. And how could somebody that I love, that loves me, do those things to me? And I would say it's what I'm going to call paranoia. I became paranoid when my daughter was born. If her father was giving her a bath, if he was changing her diaper, I could not stop myself from running in and seeing what he was doing to her.
Mm.
My whole body got sick inside. And and when it was obvious something was wrong, and he asked me what's going on, and I told him, and he said, "You're sick. How could you imagine that I would do anything to our daughter?" And I started wondering, am I sick? Am I sick? And I did get, that's when I got help. And that's when the memories of what my brother did to me came through. Um, and unfortunately, the marriage did not last. We did not have the skills to communicate and work through. Um, my guess is that he thought I was blaming him or suspicious of him, rather than, this is my problem. How do we help me and my brain? So the ending of a relationship, so a child being raised by divorced parents, maybe something else would have come up that we would have gotten divorced over, but we got divorced over this. This is why we got divorced. And not every relationship thereafter, but many um, were negatively affected because of what I'm going to call as paranoia. Um, um, there was one man who was absolutely wonderful and really knew it was not him. And there was a lot of healing in that relationship. But long-term detrimental effect would be this: how to trust a human being, a man specifically, um, that they wouldn't, yeah, how to trust, period. Yeah.
Thank you. That was very important information that you just shared. Very, uh, do you know if the person who sexually abused you, who harmed you, your brother, was abused himself as a child?
I do not know for sure. My mother, prior to her death 10 years ago, did tell me that he had been sexually abused by the neighbor across the street. Um, Unfortunately, my brother is still on drugs and alcohol. And when I asked him about it, I called him after 30 years. I had nothing to do with him for 30 years. Um, he said, "Oh, mom doesn't know what she was talking about. She was not in her right mind." And I know that is not true because I was with her the day she died. I was with her the 10 months before she died, and her brain was perfectly fine. Um, so I don't know. I don't know if he was or not. My suspicions would be that he may have been, but I don't know. I will.
Can you tell me what your greatest challenge has been living life after the sexual abuse?
Hmm. Hmm. Well, I guess it comes back to that trust and, yeah, just I'll just generically say trust.
Um, can you tell me what you wished you would have done differently before, during, or after the abuse that may have changed the results of what you experienced?
Hmm. Well, in the bed when I felt his penis on my butt, not even knowing what it was at the time, but I wished, rather than my poor little body freezing and going cold and going hard, I wished somehow there would have been a part of my brain that would have said, "Hey, what are you doing?
Mm,
What is going on?"
mhm,
I wished I would have said, "No," and jumped out of the bed and made a stink and caused disruption. And I wish I would have gone home and told my parents. Um, yeah, that's what I wished I would have done, because then he probably never would have shoved his penis down my throat and ejaculated in my mouth. And perhaps, yeah, yeah. So, um, and I wished I would have told my parents. Yeah, after telling my girlfriend, her saying you're lying, um, and my parents, mm, they weren't people that we talked with. They, we, I'm the youngest of five, and we were given orders and expected to obey those orders,
mhm.
but they were not people that I could come with questions or wonderings, or I don't know. It wasn't, sex. Anything that had to do with that was a sin, and it's a subject that was not discussed. And I think deep down in my soul, I didn't want to hurt my parents. Everybody loved Dougie. Everybody. Dougie was beautiful. Blue eyes and blonde hair and gorgeous, and everybody loved Dougie. How am I supposed to go to my parents and say, "Your son did this to me"? I really, as a child, I didn't want to hurt them. I didn't want to hurt my parents.
What would you like to say to people who harm children, who sexually abuse children?
Ooh. Well, prior to studying nonviolent communication, I would say I don't want to tell them anything. I want to line them up and kill every fucking one of them. I would love just, I would be a great person to do that. I just don't think anybody who harms another child has any consciousness as to how deeply they're affecting that little person for the rest of their life. So, number one, I would like huge consequences for someone's actions. I would like them to be held accountable. Oh my gosh, how much money have I spent in my lifetime on therapy or some kind of self-help? How much mental space have I used? How do you possibly put a sum on that? I would love, you know, yeah. What would I like to tell them? Don't fuck up another human being. Do not touch a child. Do not put your penis anywhere near a child. Period.
If you could go back and tell your child self one thing, what would it be?
Hmm. Speak up. Speak up. Tell someone. Tell Mrs. Carney, your sixth grade teacher, what happened. She will get help for you. Tell your mom and dad it's okay if they hurt. Call the police. Speak up. Don't hold it inside your body. Speak up. Tell anybody. Just speak up. Tell until somebody listens and does something to hold your brother accountable. Your brother was 10 years older than you. He was an adult. He was married. It is his fault. There's nothing to be scared of. You will be protected. I mean, I have had a lifetime of nightmares. I dream I am a dead body pretending to be dead so I'm not shot. Mostly I pretend to be dead so I'm not killed. And you know, or I'm screaming for help. I'm trying to find help. My teeth are falling out of my mouth. I'm trying to find a dentist to help me put my teeth back in. So I don't want to have to kill any part of myself, and I want to ask for help.
If there's one thing that you would want to tell the person who harmed you, your brother, what would it be?
I loved you. I loved you. And what you did to me hurt me. Deeply hurt me.
What do you want every child to know that might help prevent them from being sexually abused?
You have the right to say no. You have the right to speak up, to say no. You don't have to take anything that doesn't feel comfortable to you. Not from a parent, not from a sibling, not from a teacher. You can say no and run for help, screaming.
Thinking back over your life, please share what has helped you the most to recover and thrive from the trauma of having been sexually abused as a child.
Hmm. Wow, that's a toughie because there's been so much, but I'm gonna have to say, I guess it's the love and support of the women in my meditation group. We called each other angels, our angels, and we meditated weekly for most of my adult life. And we sat in a circle and we stated our intentions of what we were working on in our lives. And we passed a talking stick and we took turns sharing what was alive inside of us. And each person sat in silence and listened. There was no crosstalk. We just heard each other. And we meditated a tonal we just got out. I called it vomiting everything that was inside of our body out, just blah. And then eventually it would come to a euphoric, and it was a circle of all of us sounding together. And um my boyfriend at the time, the one who was so wonderful, if I hadn't been to meditation for a while, he would say, I'm wondering, have you missed meditation for a few weeks? Because I would get irritable and cranky, and all of the gook inside me would be there. So, he could tell that I needed to release. And for me, every time I breathe, um, my tears just flow. I'm not crying, but it's a physical release. Um, and it's just the tension leaves my body, it leaves my shoulders, it leaves my neck. Um, um, and the love of the support of these women, you know, uh, yeah, just there was a total acceptance of who we each were as individuals.
All right. What do you hope will be accomplished by sharing your story?
Hmm. I'm hoping that by sharing my story, others will have the courage to share their story, and all of us who have been sexually abused will speak up and share our stories and get comfortable talking about childhood sexual abuse. I believe that each of our stories is unique, and yet they all have similarities. And I think it's important that the world know how sexual abuse occurs, what it does to a human being, the effects of having been sexually abused. And I hope that will be a community of brave voices who speak up, and in turn, our children and our children's children will grow up um, knowing that just like we teach children how to stop, drop, and roll in a fire, they learn to say no. and run and tell if they're ever in a situation where somebody is sexually abusing them. That if they hear us as adults being able to speak about childhood sexual abuse, they will know that they are safe to talk about childhood sexual abuse. That is my hope. That will contribute to breaking the silence of abuse.
We're getting close to the end of our interview. How do you feel in your body right now that you have shared your story?
Mm, good question. Thank you. I feel hopeful. I feel hope, and throughout at different times, I actually had chicken skin goosebumps at different times. So some excitement and some, um, yeah, uh, I'm going to say hope and release and connection that I was able to look into your eyes and share this with you and that you were listening to me and um, gratitude, very much gratitude for the opportunity.
Is there anything that we didn't cover in this period of time that you'd like to speak about or share before we end?
Um, well, I did tell my parents about the sexual abuse eventually. Was divorced and living at my parents' house, and my brother was getting a divorce and wanted to move into the house with his three children. And at that time, I had nowhere to go. So um, I did tell them, and they did what they do, which is bury their heads in the sand. There was no conversation, there was no getting help. Um, so yeah, that I did tell, and then in 1974, I did cycle across the United States speaking out against child sexual abuse with Break the Cycle, which is a national ride to stop childhood sexual abuse. Um, and and I am writing a memoir about um, different aspects of my life that um, are affected, who I am a part of. I mean, I'm not just a person who was sexually abused, but all of my life has revolved around that. Um, and yeah, I just that's about the only thing that I'm still working on it, and this is one step towards healing. And I hope others will join and become part of the community, and we all heal together.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you, Beth.
Well, we may have a few more minutes.